Many experts have compared facial recognition to nuclear or biological weapons, just in terms of the scale of potential for harm that they have to do to our society. Most recently, we've focused quite specifically on facial recognition surveillance, which we see as a uniquely dangerous form of biometric surveillance that has such a potential for harm that we've actually advocated that it can't be effectively regulated, but rather needs to be banned entirely. We know that in law enforcement context, facial recognition surveillance has led to false arrests, almost entirely of Black men who have been falsely arrested because facial recognition algorithms disproportionately misidentify people of color, people with darker skin, and basically anyone who's not a cisgender white man. That bias that's baked into the technology exacerbates existing forms of discrimination within our society. In the case of Madison Square Garden, James Dolan, the owner, who's pretty notorious for all kinds of billionaire shenanigans, has put in place this policy that bans from Madison Square Garden anyone who works for a law firm that is engaged in litigation with the parent company. And it's one thing to have a policy like that in place. It's another thing to use facial recognition to scan the faces of every single person that walks into Madison Square Garden and pick out those people who you've decided you want to pick out. What the folks at Madison Square Garden will say is that, well, everyone that walks into our venue sees a sign that says facial recognition is in place, and so by walking in here, they are giving us our consent to use this technology on them. If you're an individual and you have a $400 ticket to a sports game at a giant corporate music venue, the power differential between you and that venue is so enormous that there is no meaningful consent when you walk in there. We did organize a small group of protesters, volunteers, really just a handful, 4 or 5 folks, to show up outside of Madison Square Garden with a banner to just alert concert goers that this is happening. So folks just had a big banner saying, warning, facial recognition is happening here effectively. We've led a number of high-profile campaigns. We're leading a large coalition with more than 50 other prominent civil liberties, civil rights, racial justice, LGBTQ, human rights organizations, calling for a ban on law enforcement and private use of facial recognition. And we've also run very effective corporate campaigns where we've gotten more than 40 of the world's largest music festivals, including Bonnaroo and South by Southwest, to say that they won't allow the use of facial recognition surveillance at their events. We've also gotten more than 60 prominent colleges and universities, including some of the biggest names in the country, to say they won't use this technology on their campuses. What I tell them is call your senator. Tell your senator that you want to see a ban on the use of this harmful technology so that you're protected. Because you shouldn't have to be a tech expert or like an undercover spy to be able to walk around in public and feel safe and know that you're not being tracked or under biometric surveillance. That should be a basic right that everyone in this country has.